You know that feeling, right? When you see someone who seemingly cuts corners, maybe isn't the most honest person,
Hmm.
yet they seem to be the ones climbing the ladder, getting ahead. Kind of thriving, actually.
Well, genuinely good, hardworking people sometimes seem to struggle. We've all seen it.
Exactly. Like the ruthless CEO or that politician who just seems to sail through scandals and somehow gains more power.
Or even, that friend who always seems to come out on top in situations and it feels a bit off.
Right. It really makes you stop and think, like, why do the so-called worst people sometimes seem to live better?
And that's really the core question we're digging into today, isn't it? We've looked at some pretty unflinching perspectives on this.
Yeah, we definitely have. For this deep dive, we've gone into some intense philosophical areas. We're talking Schopenhauer, Machiavelli's The Prince.
Hobbes' Leviathan, too.
Mm-hmm.
And even touching on social Darwinism, like Herbert Spencer's ideas.
Exactly. So our mission here, just to be clear, isn't to say, yeah, this is right. It's more about understanding why these thinkers argued that maybe a certain ruthlessness could lead to what looks like success.
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember we're just examining these viewpoints, these historical and philosophical takes. We're not endorsing them. They offer a specific, often quite cynical lens on things.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Schopenhauer. He has this really fundamental idea, the will to live. Can you maybe break that down for us, make it a bit more concrete?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So try to imagine this blind, relentless force. It's at the heart of everything alive. That's Schopenhauer's will to live.
Okay. Blind and relentless.
Yeah, it's this primal, almost irrational drive, pushing everything just to survive, to reproduce, and ultimately to gain some kind of dominance or power.
Think of it like an engine that just runs.
An engine.
And it's completely amoral.
Amoral. So, like, not immoral as in bad, but just operating without any concept of right or wrong. Precisely. According to Schopenhauer, this basic drive, it naturally favors those who act decisively. People who take risks, who don't hesitate.
Okay.
So if you're someone who's always stopping to weigh the ethics, the morality of every single action, well, you might actually lose out to someone who's just acting on that primal urge, that will to advance themselves.
So the person agonizing over, is this the right thing to do, could get left behind by the person who just does it.
That's basically the core of his argument.
Mm-hmm.
And what's fascinating here is how you see echoes of this in historical views on power.
Like Machiavelli.
Exactly. Think about Machiavelli's The Prince. He essentially says, look, a successful ruler can't always afford to be virtuous in the conventional sense.
Right.
Sometimes, if you want power, if you want stability for your state, being cruel or deceptive isn't just helpful, it might be absolutely necessary.
That famous lion and fox idea, isn't it? You need the strength, the lion, but also the cunning, the fox.
You got it. Morality kind of takes a backseat to the outcome, to maintaining control.
So being kind could actually make you fail, in his view.
Machiavelli suggested just that. Consistent kindness might lead to your downfall as a leader, yeah, whereas decisive, maybe even harsh actions could be what secures your power. The underlying idea is that life, especially in politics or fierce competition, often rewards strategic dominance more than just, goodness.
And this ties into Hobbes, too, right? With his Leviathan. That state of nature he describes sounds terrifyingly brutal.
Oh, it is. Hobbes imagined this time before society, before rules, as just a relentless war of all against all. Constant conflict.
What drives that?
Well, Hobbes argued it's partly because people are roughly equal in their ability to harm each other. That creates this constant fear of mistrust. So in that environment, driven purely by self-interest, the strong, and yes, the ruthless, tend to come out on top.
So egoism and ruthlessness aren't flaws, but survival tools.
In that pre-social state, yes, that's how Hobbes saw it. They're drivers of survival, of what counts as success when there are no rules. Morality, for Hobbes, that's something society invents later, a way to escape the danger.
Okay, so without laws, the one most willing to just take what they want without restraint is likely the winner.
That's the logic. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you see similar ideas pop up with social Darwinism.
Herbert Spencer and that whole crowd?
Right. Spencer took Darwin's ideas, often misinterpreting them, mind you, but applied this survival of the fittest concept directly to human society. The argument became that in the constant struggle for resources, for status, for power,
The most ruthless and decisive individuals or groups are just more likely to win out.
that was the argument, yeah. that they're naturally selected in a way.
Which loops right back to Schopenhauer's will to live, doesn't it? It's like social Darwinism takes that individual drive and just scales it up to society.
Right.
Those who best embody that raw will are the ones who climb the social ladder.
That's a really sharp connection. Think about it like a predator in nature, right?
Okay.
Its swift, decisive action means survival. The prey hesitates for a split second,
Yeah.
and it's over. Well, social Darwinism and Schopenhauer's ideas underneath, they suggest a similar dynamic is playing out constantly in human society. We see examples, don't we?
Oh, definitely. Business leaders who crush competitors, maybe politicians who exploit people's fears.
Exactly. Or even just people in everyday life who manipulate social situations for their own benefit. Their success, if you want to call it that, often seems to come from understanding power, how it works, and being willing to exploit it ruthlessly rather than sticking to some moral playbook.
So what does this all boil down to then? Are these thinkers basically saying that having morals, having a conscience, actually puts you at a disadvantage?
That's certainly a very stark implication you can draw from their arguments, yes. Schopenhauer especially felt that morality often clashes directly with our most fundamental instinct, survival, getting ahead.
Because thinking about ethics makes you pause.
It makes you hesitate. And in that moment of hesitation, someone more ruthless, someone without that internal conflict, can just act. They seize the opportunity.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. This idea that success, as we often see it, might not be about fairness at all. Not about who deserves it.
But about who has the sheer will to act decisively. And maybe, as these sources suggest, ruthlessly.
It's not just about acting, though, is it? There's something about how they handle emotions, too.
That's a key part of it. These thinkers suggest that individuals who succeed through ruthlessness often understand that emotions can be a liability, a weakness, when you're trying to gain or maintain control.
So they stay calm when everyone else is losing it. They can be detached when others are vulnerable.
Precisely. They often seem to have this uncanny ability to spot others' weaknesses, maybe exploit them, while protecting their own position with this kind of cool, calculated detachment. Their actions tend to be proactive, very decisive. This emotional control, this strategic thinking, it's arguably a big part of why they succeed in tough negotiations in politics, even just climbing the social ladder.
And they see hesitation, maybe driven by empathy or morals, as just weakness.
As something to be exploited, yes. Morality itself might be viewed as a strategic disadvantage in a world that's fundamentally competitive, according to this line of thinking.
That makes a sort of cold, hard sense. And it really points to a potential vulnerability for people who operate from, well, a more principled place.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about people guided by a strong moral compass. They often work on the assumption that, deep down, others play by the same rules.
Yeah, you assume fairness, honesty. You hope it gets rewarded eventually.
But these sources we're looking at, they suggest that the ruthless individual sees that very assumption, that trust in fairness, as an opening, as a weakness they can exploit.
Because the moral person is more predictable, more hesitant.
Exactly. Their predictability, their pauses for ethical reflection, maybe their emotional responses, it can inadvertently make them easier to manipulate for someone who isn't bound by those same constraints.
It's like playing chess against someone who just knocks the pieces over when it suits them.
That's a good analogy. Schopenhauer even suggested that, at its base level, human interaction is often this struggle for dominance, driven by the will to live, not necessarily by outright malice, but by that relentless drive.
And moral people resist that struggle. They value cooperation.
They often do. They value cooperation, maybe fairness, mutual respect, over just raw competition and control. But the ruthless person, according to this view, embraces that struggle. They thrive in it, often by taking advantage of the hesitation and the moral frameworks of others.
This raises an important question, though. Are we really fundamentally always in competition like that? Is that the true nature of things?
That's a huge point of debate, of course, but it's definitely the perspective these particular sources push towards. Now, think about what we're usually taught.
Work hard, follow the rules.
Play fair, treat others well, and eventually you'll get your reward right.
Mm.
Good things come to those who wait, or those who do good.
Yeah, the classic narrative.
Well, someone like Schopenhauer might argue that's largely a comforting story. A fiction we tell ourselves. Maybe one that helps keep society orderly.
A fiction.
You might point to nature again, like the lion taking down the weaker antelope. Is there fairness there, or is it just power dynamics playing out?
No fairness, just survival.
And these thinkers suggest Human society, beneath the surface, operates on a similar logic. Maybe more complex, sure, but power still flows to those willing and able to seize it, not necessarily to those who deserve it by some moral standard.
So the whole good guys finish first idea is just a way to keep people in line.
From this rather cynical viewpoint, yes. It's a narrative that can pacify people, maybe make them accept the status quo.
Wow. So in this light, ruthlessness isn't a bug, it's a feature, almost like an evolutionary advantage.
That's the provocative argument being made, yeah. That maybe human society at its deepest level is geared more toward survival and dominance than cooperation and fairness.
And the people who get to the top are often the strategic ones, not the good ones.
They're the ones who are perhaps less hindered by internal conflict. Ruthlessness, in this sense, allows them to bypass the hesitation, the emotional turmoil that a strong conscience might cause. It allows for quick, decisive action.
So if betraying someone or manipulating a situation offers a clear advantage,
A ruthless individual, according to these perspectives, might just do it without crippling guilt, without that pause, because hesitation, again, is seen as the critical weakness.
okay, so let's just quickly recap this rather intense journey we've been on. We've looked at Schopenhauer's will to live, that blind amoral drive.
Machiavelli's idea that cruelty can be strategically necessary for a leader,
Hobbes's picture of life as a brutal competition in the state of nature.
and social Darwinism applying that survival of the fittest directly to human society and competition.
And the common thread, the kind of unsettling idea running through all of them.
Is that what often looks like success in the world might actually be linked pretty directly to not being constrained by morality and instead having this laser focus on gaining and holding on to power?
Now, obviously, this is a pretty stark, maybe even cynical way to look at things. And it's vital to remember there have got to be significant costs, right? Consequences to acting this way.
Oh, absolutely. The disregard for morality, that cold, strategic approach, it surely has ripple effects, downsides, both for the individual and for society.
And that's exactly what we're going to get into next time, isn't it? We'll explore those potential costs, the fallout from this kind of ruthlessness.
Precisely. We'll flip the coin and look at the other side of this equation in our next deep dive.
Definitely something to think about until then. And maybe, as you go about your week, just consider these ideas. Think about what you see around you, success, failure. Do the rules we're taught always match up with how power really works? It's certainly gives you a lot to mull over.